like to welcome you to the second episode of the CatchMark Sibary Cybersecurity Podcast. And I'm going to re-say all of the 45 seconds of banter that I said before. I am host Brent Raeth here with my co-host
Brian Sibary.
And if it seems like I'm looking up a lot today, it's because Brian is joining us remote from south of Grand Rapids in his wonderfully warm house in Caledonia. And he's up on a screen on the wall. So I'm going to do my best to not stare at the wall because that's where Brian's at. So you can see what I'm doing right here. I'm going to try to stare right at you guys into the camera right here and make sure that I'm doing that. So Brian, what's the weather look like down there in Caledonia right now?
We're not getting much for snow, but we definitely are getting the high winds and rain and sleet, and ice is starting to build up on decks and cars, and so yeah, it's pretty slippery over here.
So what were the adjectives you used? I forgot for the ice.
Starting to layer.
Starting to layer. There was one other one too that you said that I found kind of hilarious.
Getting slickery, I guess you can put that one in there.
It's getting slickery and layering. For those of you who know Brian and I've known Brian for a long time, and we've been good friends for a long time, so I give him a lot of crap. He lived on the east side of the state for 10 years, and so now anytime there's a light wind or a small drizzle, he can't drive anywhere. So it's kind of funny. So Brian, our topic today is the top 5, top 3 security threats for 2023. And so I'm going to be quiet and I'm going to let you lead us in a little bit and just start the conversation with what you think is our number one threat.
Yeah, so we definitely want to review some of those threats that are posing to be around here this year. One of the ones that I think at the top of the list and the things that we see going on right now is we see crime as a service, right? So cyber criminals and groups have started to create a business model where they are producing avenues for people to purchase things like ransomware, right? That they can just take and they can use to their advantage and to go out and to infect users within the IT community.
So if I'm following you right, what basically they're creating a marketplace like a Walmart per se.
Yeah.
For just anybody basically to go and purchase either software that can help them to hack somebody's computer, server, network, or even selling those services. So they'll actually do it for you and provide you with the devices. So pre-hacked devitos. Is that a true statement?
They're coding all the malicious software and it's there for purchase, and they're giving you the scoop on how to run it, how to manage it, and allowing you to, take off and conduct those cyber criminal activities.
That's kind of scary. Like
it is.
Because I mean, it takes the skill out of hacking. I mean, when the one thing that was always, I guess, a little tricky, and I know this is getting different, this is evolving as we get older and more time goes by, but the one thing you could always count on is that it took some skill to be able to do that. This kind of just opens that up for anybody with a credit card and a little bit of computer knowledge to go and purchase this stuff. I mean, is that what you're seeing?
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And again, ransomware, one of those things where affects the computer system, has that ability to encrypt your data, lock your system, and then they're going to ask you for a ransom to pay if you want to regain access to your data. Regain access to your systems, and so again, it's pay the attacker or potentially lose what you have unless you have some things in place to help mitigate that.
So issue. How do people protect against that? They can't, can they? I mean,
we see a lot of ransomware get delivered through. We'll talk. One of the other threats would be phishing, right? A lot of ransomware attacks are delivered through phishing emails. Maybe there's a link you're clicking or downloading an attachment. And so some of those mitigations that you can have in place are obviously training your users to understand what those types of attacks look like, whether it be for phishing, and then have a good incident response plan that includes a backup of all your data and systems, and then understanding how that backup should be, conducted as far as how often it takes place, where it's located. And so those are some of the solutions you can put in place to, have your, I guess another good one would be if you have remote workforce, make sure they're using a virtual private connection to get in a VPN to get into the network.
So Brian, I mean, I'm sure you've done a little research on this prior to coming on the podcast, just so you're kind of up on stuff. I mean, is there anything that the law enforcement is doing to stop this stuff? I mean, like, is there anything they can do? Like, I mean, what does that look like?
So I wouldn't say stop, right? It's an individual company, individual user. They can't help with those, but what they do is they provide services. So if you are infected with ransomware, they ask that you can contact CISA, which is an organization set up by the government that can assist. Contact your local FBI, and they've got resources they can help, and again, figure out where you're at with the situation, and then provide some guidance to kind of guide you through that process.
So hacking or cybersecurity or hacking as a service or crime as a service kind of thing. That's your number one. What's number two? You mentioned phishing. Would that be a 2 on your list?
Yeah, again, phishing is something that is attackers are going for that weakest link. And right now the user, as we've built up our defenses, technically, not that they don't still have vulnerabilities, not that they don't still show weaknesses, but the user is an easy avenue for an attacker into a system, into an organization, into being able to steal data, right? So the whole idea of a phish is to potentially steal credentials from a user. So they're going to send a user an email, hey, click here, download this attachment. There's going to be some scripts that run in the background, grab those credentials, and now once they have your credentials, they're going to be able to attempt to log into your email, log into your data sources, and steal that information.
So, I mean, essentially what they're doing is, if we think about this as they're trying to trick somebody. They're using the vulnerability of the person to trick them into basically opening the door for them. So if you think about a building that's got all the doors and windows locked, and you got a guard dog, and you got all the latest security stuff, basically you're tricking the person inside to shut all that off and open the door for you, right? They're opening the back door and letting you in, kind of thing. Is that a good way to say it, I guess?
Yeah, and imagine if it's somebody that and we see this right with phishing emails. One of our companies that we support right now, they've got an email that went through. It came from an employee that works there. It's underneath their name, right? So they're spoofing that address. So imagine if, I had a mask that looked like you, and I went to your house, knocked on your door, and your wife, lets me in, or your kids let me in, and now I have access, right? And peel off the mask, boo, scary guy, right? So that's the kind of stuff that we see for sure with phishing. Again, they're trying to trick, and a lot of times we'll talk about, one of those things that's new and kind of flashy is the ChatGPT, a chat service that's
going into AI today, huh?
Going into AI, yep.
Oh, man.
So a service that, artificial intelligence, you can ask it a question, it can spit you back some results. What we see is some of these criminals can use that same service to say, hey, draft me an email on collecting on a financial payment, right? Or hey, introduction email, and they can use that have the AI system write that for them, use that, put it into an email, send it out, and again, it's part of their phishing efforts.
You're taking something that people are already scared of, and you're making them even more scared. So AI is not hacking you. Well, it might be. We don't know yet.
AI, if you ask AI the question, I guess AI is going to tell you no, it's not hacking you. But
so you ask ChatGPT the question: are you dangerous?
I saw somebody in an article ask ChatGPT, "Are you dangerous?" and it said no. along with another paragraph.
It's kind of funny,
why. But
go ahead, Brian. Sorry.
But again, if if you're like, hey, I need to draft an email to kind of say these things, it's going to spit back that email. And again, it's just
punctuation's right, makes it look more legitimate.
Exactly.
Using the right verbiage, lexicon, that kind of stuff. So
yeah, we talked about crime as a service. Criminals they're looking for the easiest way to accomplish their goals as well. So whether that's to pay somebody else to write the ransomware code, or to have a chat service, an AI chat service, write those emails for them, again, to look authentic. A lot of times we we train our users to look for things inside of emails that are triggers, right?
Right.
Who is the sender? What's the attachment? Am I expecting it? But one of the things we tell them to look for is misspelled words, kind of busted up language, and something like a AI chatbot will help eliminate some of those
Problems.
indicators.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you won't be able to, it's like it's camouflaging it better for them.
exactly.
Like I don't think you can blame AI for everything that goes wrong.
Nope.
I did read an article the other day where, Microsoft has put Chat GPT into Bing,
Yep.
and everybody was like, "Oh, it's gonna be the death of Google." And a guy had a really odd experience with Chat GPT and some of the questions it asked. The questions he asked and it answered. It was pretty fascinating. I mean, it can do some amazing things, but I think it's still just a tool, right? So,
Yes.
so super, super interesting stuff. And I'm sure AI will be used for evil because basically all tools are used for evil if they can be, right?
Yeah, there's a will, there's a way to find, and that's what we kind of see here.
So somebody's chatting us. S1Ep2 is saying robots will absolutely rule the world, Brian. So maybe I don't know. There's a really good book I just finished called 1,000 Brains, and it talks about human intelligence and AI, and I'd recommend it for anybody that's interested in that kind of stuff. It had a real different take on our ability to recreate our intelligence because we don't really even know how the brain works. Is the gist of kind of what it said. So interesting stuff. So number 2 for sure, phishing. I went to a hacker conference for quite a few years in Grand Rapids called GERCON, and really good conference. There was a group there that did hacking as a service, but not for criminals, for businesses. So they would try to social engineer. Businesses would hire them, and they would try to social engineer. And they recorded these and got permission to release them. And a guy recorded his phone conversations with this business, and you could actually watch and hear how he escalated information that he got all the way up to basically getting somebody to give him the CEO of the company's credentials and information. It was quite amazing to listen to it. He started with a very low level employee and called him and said, "Hey, this is Jeff from tech support. I heard you have an issue." And everybody has an issue with their computer. So they said, "Yeah, is it ticket 4357?" And he's like, "Yeah, absolutely. Ticket 4357. Can you remind me what that ticket's for?" And the lady on the phone is like, "It's for this, this, and this." So then he talked her into allowing him to remote install the remote software. He actually fixed her problem. So like, again, gaining legitimacy while he's there, he's snooping around and picking up information from her. And then he goes to the next person and he does something similar, and the next person and the next person, eventually ending with the CEO's credentials. And he didn't need any technical experience other than how to fix an Outlook problem and remote into a computer. I mean, that's really all it took. So, you got to be careful and diligent out there.
And again, so phishing falls underneath that social engineering, right, as a whole. And in the example you just brought up, another example of social engineering is just, again, making that phone call or shooting that quick message through text, or, hey, you need some help, or I'm looking to, buy something from you, or right. And they're just trying to start that conversation, engage. And once they start that conversation, it can snowball into, like you said, something that's much bigger and much worse.
Yeah. So number 2, phishing. What's number 3? What do you think, Bri? What's something that worries you?
Yeah, I mean, again, part of leveraging that phishing platform would be malware. Malware is malicious software. Again, if you're sent a phishing email, you could download some malware, or if you're on the web and you click on a link that's malicious link, or download some software that's malicious, that malware. Go ahead.
That's pretty much what hacking as a service is, right? Like you're buying malware from a marketplace or from somebody that wrote it, and then they're maybe using phishing to deliver that malware. Correct? Am I correct in that?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And so again, that has that potential to allow an attacker to remotely control your PC, hijack it to send out other malicious software. And then, of course, we always come back to, looking to steal your data. And again, this is something that could be delivered through email, could be delivered through a website, software downloads, things of that nature.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit just about one of the things that I think scares the crap out of me is we have, everything we do now is smart home or automated.
Yeah.
What's the risk in having those types of devices, and do you see that as something that could be a vulnerability for us as we move forward?
Yeah, absolutely. Smart devices are designed to, collect data, share data, help make our lives easier. But again, if there's not protective measures put in place, if those types of devices are not being updated, again, as companies produce software, over time, they find vulnerabilities, and those vulnerabilities need to be updated and patched and secured. And so, if those devices don't ever receive any updates, how many times have you bought just a camera to secure your house, right? And the company tells you, basically we've reached end of life support for that particular camera. They're no longer going to update that. They're no longer going to provide those security patches. And so, hey, move to the next platform. When you don't do those things, you're opening yourself up to a risk.
Yeah, anything that is network connected, I think, is a vulnerability in your home. And again, I don't necessarily think people should be fearful of that technology. I know a lot of people that, the Chinese are listening to me. Look, if the Chinese want to listen to you, they're going to listen to you, and it's nothing you're going to do is going to stop them, right?
Yeah.
It's more of the buying those devices, and like you said, not having them patched and updated. Leaving default usernames and passwords in. I remember a guy was bragging about how he hacked some stuff, and he didn't really hack it. The person just put stuff online and left the default Linksys username and password of Linksys, right? That's not hacking. That's basically a poor configuration that you're getting in, and you're able to do some of that stuff. So, securing devices out of the box, patching and updating them, taking some of those precautions are, I think, extremely important. But if it touches the network, there is a bit of risk there,
There is a possibility. Yeah. Again, and the idea behind those types of devices is to be connected, right? To interact and to communicate with each other. So again, one vulnerability in one can affect all the others.
So S1Ep2 asks, any recommendations for how a consumer can stay informed in the risk to those types of home networking devices, kind of smart home stuff?
Yeah, so there are different, again, we talk about our computer systems, right? We go out and there are, vulnerability alerts that get pushed out that you can sign up for and monitor, similar with smart devices, right? So you go out, sign up for alerts to be delivered to your email, and that way you can monitor, when updates happen, when vulnerabilities happen. And sometimes it's, a lot of the times if it's affecting a major appliance or a major software, or major device, you'll see some headlines on that stuff that come out, and people are sharing it and giving you the opportunity to, catch it and try to get in front of it.
Yeah, I would say that I have two pieces of advice there. One, when you're setting those devices up, if there's an auto update feature, I would click it. A lot of people don't like to do that just because they're afraid that an update will break something, and they do once in a while. Sometimes they're supposed to help, but they do reduce functionality. But the opposite of that is having an unpatched, unsecured device. So I'd say that's the first place. Just have your devices auto update. That means they get the latest patches. They understand what's going on. There are some lists that you can subscribe to that will kind of keep you informed from a consumer perspective. Most vendors also have kind of a mailing list or a website that you can go to, and that will tell you, here's your latest version of software. Here's some things that have happened. Here's some things that you need to be aware of. So I would say all of those things, and it does take a little bit of work, right? I think that's the other thing is it does take a little bit of your time to make sure that stuff's being taken care of.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
there's so many times where, again, if it's a device that you're actually logging onto or using, how many times do you see that pop up and it's annoying, right? So you kind of hide it, and maybe it sits there and doesn't force itself to take place. And so anytime you see those things, definitely follow through, allow those updates to be applied, and yeah, protect your system.
yeah, for sure. I have some point-to-point gear at my house, and they're not devices that I touch often. So they broke one time, and it was because I wasn't keeping the firmware up to date. And I did exactly what I just gave the advice to do. I went in, set it to auto, made
Yeah.
sure that it kept online and that it was updated. Because it's easy to forget, So yeah, so I think home automation IoT stuff is extremely interesting in a vulnerability. Talking a little bit about some other things. I mean, what are some other items, Brian, that you would put on your list in regards to top kind of cybersecurity threats or things that you want to think about in 2023?
Yeah, I would say what we call is the insider threat, right? The person inside the company, and whether that's malicious intent, accidental. Um, again, we as humans have become a threat to our own organizations, to our own systems. Some of the things we've already talked about, the malware, the phishing, the ransomware, those are things that are done, I would say, on an accidental situation, right? A user doesn't mean to click that, they just do. So we always recommend providing security awareness and training to our
Absolutely.
users of our companies and organizations, but also the insider threat, maybe somebody who's disgruntled, somebody who was fired, somebody who's angry, and if they have access to information, or maybe they leave the company and we don't do a good job of cleaning up their credentials or access to the system. Could they drive up with their computer the next day and sit out in the parking lot and still connect into the network and steal data, and so those things are all on the table.
So Brian,
Insider threat.
yeah, I think insider threat is a big one that often goes overlooked as well.
Yeah.
And I would say both from a malicious and non-malicious way, right? Like a lot of insider threat stuff happens not because they're trying to bring the company down or cause harm. It really is more just accidental, right? But one of the things that I see in a lot of small to medium businesses is the way they set up in the beginning, the way they control access to data and access to facilities and things like that is kind of a allow all, permit by deny by exception, which means that if you've got a file share, everybody has access to all folders because that's what's easiest, right? In a situation like that, where you're set up like that, an assistant or a temp or an intern, if they get compromised, they have access to all your data. So one of the things in my recommendations in that situation from an insider threat perspective to mitigate that is limit who has access to what data within your organization.
And do it from the beginning, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely.
Staff just kind of grant it all, right? And what happens is years go down the road, and we see this, right, with some of the companies that come to us for support. And hey, we've had this data, we've had this access, it's been granted forever. Now trying to reverse all that and set up the proper way does become a little more of a challenge. Where if like you said, using the correct permissions or roles or groups, and signing those things to providing that access to those roles, groups, and permissions from the beginning, then it can save you some of the legwork down the road.
Yeah, I mean, you try to fix that at the end, and it breaks processes and it causes issues, and it's kind of a bit of a mess. And we've definitely seen that. But I would also say I've definitely seen where somebody has access to things they don't need to have access to, and a lot of it's just given because of speed and quickness and ease, and there's not a lot of thought on that. So insider threat is a very, very real thing. I would say that paired with phishing is probably the biggest threat in my mind, because it can circumvent everything you have. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and we again, we talked about some of these top threats that we feel are going to be a part of our lives in 2023, and again, we talk about how they kind of blend together, right? And phishing is that vehicle to deliver some of the others, and it involves the the person inside the company. Again, some of these things tie together, but talking about them as different points.
Okay. What other things are you seeing, Brian, from a threat perspective?
I would say, again, we talk about the insider threat, cloud security, right? Amazon, Microsoft, they do a good job of protecting their environments, setting them up to allow you to be successfully protected, crypting. But again, it comes back to the user who's using that environment. So again, we've talked about the insider threat and phishing. If you've got your email services hosted in a Microsoft cloud environment, just because it's hosted there doesn't mean it's foolproof and safe, right? There's still a user interaction that can open up potential threats.
In a configuration too. So a lot of people don't know. Say you're using something like Microsoft 365, Office 365. I know they've rebranded to Microsoft. I still have a hard time saying that. I think that a lot of people don't know that in the back end of setting that stuff up, Microsoft sets it up in a pretty secure way, but there's other things that you can do there. You can put litigation holds that have to be turned on, basically. So you can put on litigation holds so that it saves email for a certain amount of time, even after a user deletes it, just in case something happens. There's ways to configure that environment to be more secure. And I think that a lot of people miss that. They think, oh, I set it up, I created a user, we're good. And that is definitely not always the case. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Okay. So we're kind of coming to the end here, Brian.
Okay.
So I wanted to ask you one quick question. What's the craziest thing you've seen in your years as a cybersecurity professional? Like maybe your biggest, holy cow, I can't believe that that's going on. I'm going to stump him. I'm going to stump him. And
yeah.
He might not be able to talk about it because he might have to kill you. Right, Brian?
Yeah. No, I would say, I worked for the Department of Defense in the past, right? In joining CatchMark, working with more commercial-based companies, do see more of the phishing attacks and the malware and the ransomware that take over. And I would say just the level of phishing, it's just constant, right? And so we're always, using the products and tools we have, using the education we have to try to educate our workforce and definitely look for them to, along with all this stuff, one of the things I didn't mention was anytime that you can enable multi-factor authentication, it helps, right? So when someone steals your credentials, multi-factor authentication requires that extra piece to authenticate. The criminal probably doesn't have, if it's a cell phone or whatnot, they don't have access to that information. It can help to mitigate that problem.
All right. So I'm not sure the craziest thing I've seen either. I've seen some pretty silly stuff, passwords taped under the bottom of keyboards, in drawers. I've seen passwords that were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Yeah.
I've seen some really crazy stuff. I think some of the craziest, I've seen a couple ransomware events and worked a couple ransomware, incidents that it was crazy how long the ransomware actors were squatting in the environment. We had one where the whole organization was shut down for almost a month. The ransomware squatter got into the environment, corrupted the backups over that amount of time, stole gigs upon gigs of data, poked around, had his way with the entire environment, and then the ransomware was on the way out, right? And so he ransomwares it. He already knows how much that they can afford to pay, so he sets his ransom at an amount he knows it's going to be cheap because he knows they don't have backups, so he knows what the environment looks like. I mean, it's just crazy what, and we saw this happen, right? And they had no way of, other than recreating all this business information for the last month, which for a decent sized organization might be $1 million worth of work wasted. And then they're not going to be able to work instantly, but then do they pay the ransom? And I, as crazy as it sounds, I would tell you that most people pay the ransom in that scenario.
Yeah, one of the things you talked about was knowing how much, potentially the company's willing to pay if they've got their cybersecurity insurance. If they have cybersecurity insurance and they have that policy stored on the network somewhere in electron form,
right?
The attacker finds that, they can pull that policy, find out what the coverage is, and lo and behold, they can ask you for that amount and hope you pay it, right? They do want you to pay.
Yeah, that's how they make their money.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they make their money in a couple ways: leaking your data and getting you to pay the ransom. And paying the ransom is a quicker and easier way to do it. So,
right.
And if they get in, they kind of own you. So, well, that's going to just about do it for us today. We appreciate everybody's patience. Brian has remoted in. I think it went pretty well, other than me not following the checklist at the very beginning. We really appreciate everybody that listens. If you do listen and you enjoy this podcast, please like and subscribe to the podcast and to the channel. Brian and I will be back here in 2 weeks to talk a little bit more cybersecurity. Brian, what's next on the docket? Do you remember what the next topic is?
I don't remember offhand what the next topic is.
You are a terrible podcaster. That's supposed to roll right off your tongue, buddy. It'll be something cybersecurity related, correct?
It is going to be, to be honest with you, I think we're going to focus a little more on phishing and just talk a little bit about how we, help our organizations, strengthen their user workforce and some of the tricks that you can use to help identify a phishing email and then train your users and simulation and all that good stuff. So.
Awesome. Well, on behalf of CatchMark Technologies and on behalf of Brian and I, we appreciate everybody who listened. And again, like and subscribe if you enjoy our content. We will be back in 2 weeks, and we appreciate everybody who listened today. And thank you. And we'll talk to you in 2 weeks.
All right. See everyone. Thanks.